All right, well, we will go ahead. Mike, are you ready?
Go for it.
All right. Well, first of all, I would like to thank everyone here tonight for joining us for another candidates forum that is being sponsored by the League of Women Voters of BlackHawk County and Bremer County. So thank you for joining us, and thank you to that organization for doing such a great job of informing our electorate. We know that's so important. We have some very important candidates that are running for state office that are going to be joining us this evening. Just as a side note, we invited all the candidates for each of these positions, but we were very happy to have Pam Egli, who is running for Iowa Senate District 32. So Pam, welcome to the group.
Thank you.
Also, we are welcoming Carissa Froyum, who is Iowa State Representative District 63. Welcome for joining us. Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Also want to make a few notes of some people behind the scenes that are also helping us today. First of all, I would like to say thank you to Mike Dargan, who's kind of our technical guru and helping us put this on Facebook Live. So we'd like to welcome all of our Facebook Live listeners as well, or watchers as well. And also Mike will be posting this to the League of Women Voters Facebook page. So should you want to review this forum again, please do. If you'd like to share it with others, we'd ask you to do that as well. So Mike, thank you for sharing your talents with us tonight. Also, we'd like to welcome Sherry Dargan, who is president of the League of Women Voters of BlackHawk-Bremer counties. She will also be serving as our timer this evening. So thank you, Sherry. We just want to talk a little bit about how we will be conducting the forum tonight. We will be asking each of our candidates to present an opening statement. And since we have only 2 candidates, we have reserved from 7 to 8 o'clock. But if we run a little short or a little long of that, we certainly don't mind, because we know it's important for all of the information to reach our voters here in our counties. So we'll ask for opening statements, and I will then pose the first question by the moderator, and I will alternate asking one of you to start first, so that I'm not providing any favoritism or anything over one. So you'll each be asked one first time, and the other one will be asked the first time. And then after that, we would invite questions from our listeners. Please put them in the chat box if you would, and also on Facebook, and we will be taking those questions. Hopefully we have a lot of questions that come up, and we want the issues out on the table. So as our guests are speaking today, we hope that it also triggers in your mind some questions that we need to ask our candidates. So again, welcome everybody. And we would first ask for Pam to provide an opening statement. So Pam, please take the floor.
Thank you. I want to thank the League of Women Voters for hosting this forum. And thank you to the voters who are tuning in and maybe asking us questions. I believe that as a candidate, we owe voters an opportunity to hear our thoughts and our views. And you deserve a chance to ask questions of the candidates, people who are going to represent you. And this forum provides both. And so I'm a teacher. I've worked with students and parents and teachers, staff, administrators, and I've worked with them to find solutions to problems and also to help provide opportunities for growth. And I believe that my ability to listen and work with people is what the Iowa Senate needs. Iowa's a great place to live, and I have lived in Iowa my whole life. I appreciate rural Iowa and the benefits that life here offers. And I want to preserve and strengthen that quality of life that, I enjoy living right here in District 32. And in order for that to happen, we need leadership from people that are willing to listen, and also from people who aren't afraid to bring to the table knowledgeable people to help make those informed decisions. I don't believe that elected officials have all the answers. And so it takes us bringing people who are knowledgeable to help make those decisions and guide in the right direction. So I welcome your questions this evening, and I look forward to letting you hear my thoughts and my opinions on issues. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Pam. Carissa, please give us your opening statement.
Good evening, everybody. I am Carissa Froyum. I'm running for the Iowa House District 63 seat, which is all of Bremer County and Northern Blackhawk County. And I'm thrilled to be here with you tonight. Thank you as well to the League of Women Voters. And I'm especially honored to be here in the year of the centennial celebration of women fighting for and winning the right to vote. What an honor to spend this time with you. And thank you, Pam, for joining us as well. I wanted to start by telling you a little bit about my story and why I decided to run. I am not somebody who ever wanted to be in politics. I grew up in the country. I'm a small town kid. And I grew up in a family with not a lot of money, but small town values. And my family really valued community service, giving back, and especially education. And for me, education has been a central part of my life. I'm a fourth generation educator. And my dad actually worked in my school growing up. And so I got to see both sides as a student and also as the family member of somebody who is an educator. And after I graduated from high school, I went to Concordia College in Moorhead, Minnesota, which is a sister college to Wartburg, which is in my district, of course, in Waverly. And after I graduated from college, I did a year of volunteer work in Washington, D.C. with both AmeriCorps and the Lutheran Volunteer Corps. And my experiences there have been really fundamental and foundational in shaping who I am. I was just new to the city when September 11th happened. And it has developed in me a great love and appreciation, especially for our emergency responders. I then went to graduate school and worked my way back home, where I am raising my family with my husband, Adam, who is a family practice doctor, and we have 3 kids. And I wanted to let you know that the reason I'm running is because it's time for some changes in our district that put our families and their needs and their healthcare needs first.
Thank you very much, Carissa. I appreciate your comments there. I'm going to start with a question to both of you, and we will ask Pam to answer this question first. We would like to ask you what you believe is the most crucial problem that is facing Iowa today.
Okay, thank you for that. I believe the most crucial problem facing Iowa right now is our virus, and that we need to figure out how to get this thing under control, because that's affecting everything from economics to our schools to our healthcare, all of that. And so that's going to take some good leadership and just figure out how we get that to move forward so that we can continue to work and do our jobs and provide. And also, because of that virus, we've exposed another crucial problem in our state, and that's the ability to access fast, reliable broadband. When people lack this necessity of broadband access, we struggle with students being able to complete education assignments and tasks, businesses providing services, healthcare needs when they are doing telehealth, our farmers that use the broadband with their farming operations, and you know, just for our general living and working conditions. And the other thing it has done through COVID, if you have access to it, families can stay connected. And I have had this with my parents. My parents are in a retirement community, and although they live in independent living, because they're under the same roof of the rest of the retirement community, they have to live with visit restrictions. And so they have not seen their children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren since this has all happened. Because I'm in the same community this summer with warm weather, they were able to come see me. And so we had some opportunity there. But because we happen to be in a community that has good access, we were able to set them up for Zoom and through Facebook Live and all of that, you know, and so they could FaceTime and Zoom with their family. But some of my siblings don't have great access, and then they would freeze and it wouldn't be so easy. So that has really exposed it just in that small part, without even talking about economic needs and all of that. So just the idea that not everybody in our state has access to speed and availability of broadband, that's a problem. You know, we once thought of this as a luxury, and now we realize that access to broadband is really an essential service, and it helps us in many ways. So I think that we need to find a way to really bring and expand broadband throughout our state, because it will address many issues.
Thank you, Pam. Carissa, what do you
Thanks for-
believe is the most crucial problem in Iowa? I'm sorry.
No, thank you. So thank you for the question. So the biggest, my daughter's peeking in here. This is Linnea. So the most critical issue, I agree with Pam, is certainly the virus. And for me, that's within this broader context of our healthcare crisis, which the virus has certainly, thanks, sweetheart. The virus has certainly exposed the cleavages in the breaking points in our healthcare system. So when we're talking to people, it's really devastating. The pandemic has devastated our small businesses. We have elderly people who aren't leaving their homes and not enjoying those years of their lives when they should be really enjoying their non-working years. And instead, we have people who are terrified and are getting sick and dying. And we're seeing this also with the crisis around our workers and especially our meatpacking plants. So healthcare is actually the most important issue for me. This is the top issue. This is what drew me into the race. I have a child with a life-threatening medical condition. And so I have experienced the healthcare crisis in our state from the inside. And as I mentioned, my husband's a physician. And we have got to get this virus under control, because without that, our small businesses are going to continue to hurt. We're going to continue to have Iowans getting sick and dying, and we're going to have great instability for our kids and their future because of the instability in our school systems, with people coming in and out. And honestly, I'm terrified. We're in our third peak in the United States, and we're heading into cold and flu season in the midst of a pandemic, and we still don't have a plan to deal with it in this state. And that's just unacceptable. We still are unable to access testing. Especially in our rural areas, it's hard to get tested, or you have to still prove your symptoms in order to get tested. And we know that people are carrying and spreading the virus without even knowing it and meaning to. So for me, it certainly is getting this virus and the pandemic under control and dealing with all of the negative consequences that have come from that and that have been exposed, unfortunately.
Thank you, Carissa. I appreciate that. I'd like to pose another question to both of you, and this time we will have Pam start first. I'm sorry, Carissa. Sorry about that. Yes. We would like to say, we've talked a little bit about access to healthcare and such, but we wanted to know, let us know about how you believe that privatized Medicaid has served Iowans.
Yeah, I appreciate that question, Michelle, because this is the issue that drew me into the race. So I mentioned earlier that I have a child with a life-threatening medical condition. That's my now 9-year-old, and he was born with it. Nobody did anything wrong. This is just how he was born. He doesn't breathe in his sleep, and he is vent dependent. He needs a machine to breathe for him. And the privatization of Medicaid has been an absolute disaster in our state. It hasn't saved us money. It's taken our jobs away and shipped them elsewhere. And it has been devastating for families and especially our people with disabilities in our state. Our state auditor recently did a survey to see if providers think that it has improved our services in the state. And in fact, they said what we all know on the ground, which is no. Our healthcare providers are equally critical of the privatization of Medicaid because unfortunately, our managed care organizations have not been paying their bills. And when they don't pay their bills, our especially rural service providers, our health clinics, our community service providers can't stay in business, and they can't pay their bills either. So for me, we need to clean up this Medicaid mess, which is dragging down our entire healthcare system, and we need to get this under control ASAP. And we've had this system now for 5 years, and we have not taken action at this point to hold these companies accountable, who are spending our taxpayer money and wasting it and putting in their own pockets instead of providing care to families with children like mine.
Thank you, Carissa. Pam, also I'll restate the question in case there's some people that are joining us late, has privatized Medicaid, excuse me, served Iowans? How has it served Iowans?
Thank you for that. And Carissa, yes, I totally agree with everything you said. And it's really important to acknowledge the shortcomings, and that these, you know, the MCOs have done to us. I think that it's going to be difficult to take it back to a public option. I don't know how we make that happen. I've talked with people about how difficult that would be, but maybe there's a compromise here. I'm not sure, but as I've listened to people, and maybe we take part of it back to a public option, and that would be for people who are like in a situation where they are never going to get totally better. They're not going to get off of this, and make that a public option so that there can be some better oversight, and we know what kind of care they need. And it needs to, the oversight also needs to be done for these for people and for the people who are being served by independent ombudsmen, and make that so that we can have better oversight, so that we know, yes, providers are being paid and people are being cared for. And we know that it really pays Medicaid, you know, only pays, I don't know if it's 60% or whatever, but you know, it's so small that Bremer County just lost its what do I want to say? Not public health. Oh, our home health. In-home health. In-home health care. And because it was losing so much money. And how are we, and they didn't have places for everybody. And so to me, that is a shortcoming of Medicaid. These are people on Medicaid, and they can't be served. And so we, as a county, have to, as I saw it, and I only heard part of it, and I don't have the full understanding, it seemed like we were cutting our losses. And so I think that is a problem, and it's something we need to focus on, and we need to really get a handle on.
Thank you, Pam. The next question we would like to pose to you, each of you, is how can we build bipartisan support for education, both at the K-12 level and higher education? How can we build bipartisan, how would you go about doing that, building that support for the education in Iowa? Pam, we'll start with you.
Okay, thank you. Being a teacher, working in negotiations, and having to work across the teams of bringing teachers and administrators together, I feel like the first thing we have to do is really get an understanding of where we were and where we've come to this point. We have underfunded not just K-12, but higher education. When we look at higher education and how students, the portion that they used to pay compared to what we now charge them in tuition, because we've cut back on what we've given universities, that we have to acknowledge that. And so in order to work together, we have to make sure we have the facts right, that we look at the same information. But then as legislators, we have to talk to one another, and we have to listen to one another. And I just feel that that really hasn't happened. I think the closer we can share leadership because whomever is in leadership has the power. And we need to make sure that it's more balanced. And then we can hopefully communicate better, listen better, and come to decisions that are formulated with bipartisan actions and voice, and really get a handle on this, because education is important. It used to be the drawing factor to Iowa when people from students from Iowa graduated and left. When they were ready to raise a family and they wanted to come back to Iowa so that they could be educated here. And our universities are good universities, and our community colleges are strong. And so we need to take pride in that and make sure that we continue to fund that, so we see it as a real strength and an asset to our state.
Great. Thank you so much, Pam. Carissa, we will again just state the question for our audience in case there's anybody join us at this time. The question to you is, how can we build bipartisan support for education, both K-12 and higher education?
Yeah, thanks for the question, Michelle. I agree with Pam in a lot of ways about that we need to reprioritize education. And both Pam and I are educators. I'm in my 14th year at UNI, and I chose to work at UNI because of the excellent reputation of education in this state. And with any issue, especially with education, should not be a partisan issue, period. Education is a common good. It is for the benefit of everybody in the state that we have not just educated people, certainly that, but also an educated workforce, right? We need people to work in our 21st century jobs in this state, and we can't do that without education. But for me, the bigger issue is about how do we approach when we disagree about things, and how do we actually find common ground? And the answer to that is really about relationship building, and that we need to actually build back trust between people in our communities. And we are headed the other direction right now. We're getting more disagreement, more hostility. And instead, what we need to do is sit down and actually talk with each other and build our plans for the future around our common interests. And education should be at the absolute top of that list. Education is what is going to help us continue on and to be a successful state. So I agree with Pam. We need to deal with our funding shortage issue. We need to actually bring our teachers back to the table so that their voices are heard, and all of our educators, including our teachers, but also our paras, our janitors, our bus drivers. If it's affecting you, you should be at the table. And of course, we need our parents. I have 3 children in public school in Denver. And I'm going to be honest with you that part of the reason we moved to Denver is we wanted our kids to have a small town experience. Both my husband and I are small town kids, country kids, right? And we went to small town schools. But also because of the exceptional reputation of the Denver school system. And that reputation is built by Republicans and Democrats. This is not an issue where one group should have a say over and not another group, right? Because it affects all of us. And I will just say, part of that for me is really opposing school vouchers. And I want to make clear that I oppose those. Anything that is taking resources away from our public school system is hurting our entire state. And especially in our rural places where there are not parochial or private school options, those resources are going to be drained from our rural areas if we end up going this route. So we need to prioritize public education, get our educators back at the table. And with all of our issues, we need to actually start building trust with each other, listening to each other, as Pam so eloquently stated, and focus on our common interests and moving from there.
Thank you, Carissa. Just remind our listeners, our viewers, that if they have any questions today, if they would please put those in the chat box, and we will be taking questions. So please let us know if you have something you would like to share. Next question we would like to pose to our candidates, and like to remind everyone, this is Iowa Senate District 32, Pam Egli, if you just want to wave so everybody knows you, Pam, in Iowa State Representative District 63. And that is also being joined today by Carissa Froyum. So thank you so much for both being here. Next question I'd like to pose to both of you, and we will have Carissa start us off with the answer to this question, not the answer, but at least her opinion, is what can we do to better support agriculture in the state of Iowa? Both of you are representative of very rural districts, very characteristic of many of the legislators in our Iowa legislature, but what can you do to better support agriculture in this state?
Yeah, I appreciate that question. So I come from a family of country folk. I grew up in a family of farmers, teachers, and pastors, and my husband is a farm kid. And so this is an issue we talk about with our family a lot, as well as when we're talking with people around the district. You are absolutely right. We are an agriculturally based state, and our situation for our farmers has been awful and getting worse this year, including because of the pandemic. We know that people are really struggling. So there's several things that we need to do. But I do want to say that this is an issue around which I feel like Democrats have not done their part and their background enough, especially in our neck of the woods. And I want to change that. I want to make sure that people know that whatever your issues are, that I'm going to listen to them and bring forward on your behalf what is in your family and your business and your farm's best interest. So I want to say that first. So we need to deal with we need to make sure that we have our supply chains open. The disaster at Tyson negatively affected our farmers. They were the ones left holding the responsibility and all of the after effects of the irresponsibility of running the plants inappropriately during the pandemic, which destroyed our supply chain for quite a while there. So I want to say we need to make sure that that is happening, that we are protecting those supply chains and making sure that our farmers' commodities have places to go outside of Iowa. And we need to continue to be the people who are advocating for our farmers to keep those things open. So maybe another topic for us to talk about is the natural resource part of this. And my grandfather was the greatest environmentalist I know. He's a farmer. Our farmers are the people who are leading the way and need to be leading the way and need to be at the table to help us figure out how we're going to deal with our environmental issues that we are facing. These are not issues that people should be imposing upon our farmers, but they should be leading the way, and we should be incentivizing them and providing them the resources to do that.
Thank you, Carissa.
Yeah.
Pam, we'd like you to also address the question, what can we do to better support our agricultural economy here in Iowa?
Okay, thank you for that. Well, part of it is with the tariffs that were put on our markets and for our exchange and things like that, that really hampered some things. So we as an agricultural state, even though that is a federal program, we need to make sure that we talk with our federal legislators from the state level to let them know how important that is, that our farmers have markets, and in order so that they have a place for their product. And we have more than just farmers. We are an ag state. So we have other, besides our family farms and things like that, there are other businesses that are ag related. And so we have to support those programs as well and make sure that they can be successful, because yes, this is what we do. This is what Iowa does. It's a large part of our state economy. So we have to make sure that it can be successful. People can be successful in their jobs, and we can support our farmers. We know that the suicide rate of farmers has increased, and it's because we have not made life easy for them. And yes, we've supported them with giving them incentives, but that's not the same as making a living, and they want to make a living, and they want to make an honest living, and they want their crop prices to be one that they aren't just break even. So we need to make sure that we can support that in any way that will be good for our state, for our people. And as Carissa had said before, when we talk about how to help people, and we talk about issues, these are, as she said, people issues, and they should not be bipartisan. And we should be working together to find answers to these issues and these problems.
Yes, thank you very much, Pam. I appreciate your comments on that. Next, I'd like to offer you both a question. We'll start with Carissa on this one. Is what do you believe is the biggest challenge to rebuilding the economy in Iowa?
Not to punt, but I started last time. Do you want it to go back to Pam?
Yes, I would. Thank
Okay.
you.
Yeah, no problem.
How nice of you. Thank you. Pam, we'll put you on
I
the-
take turns nicely.
Yeah, you do. Thank you. Pam.
Okay, rebuilding our economy or building our economy. We need to work within our communities for economic development and to make our rural communities a little more successful. We have an opportunity in our small towns that offer a great living style. To have places where your kids can ride bikes and play outside and have a little freedom that way. And this pandemic that we've had has brought people home because they had to leave the city for whatever reason, and they were going to be working from home. So they came back. Some want to stay, and they've realized they can work remotely. But in order to work remotely, what do we need? Broadband. And we have to make sure that we have it so that they can be here. But we can use this as an opportunity for growth by having people with access to that so that they can work from home. They can help rebuild our small rural communities. It will keep our schools vibrant, which that's kind of a focal point of our rural communities are their schools. That a lot of life happens around school and school activities. And you feel that sense of community and family. And I think we need to take advantage of that. And that is a way we can build economy in Iowa.
Thank you, Pam. Carissa, tell us how our biggest challenge to rebuilding the economy in Iowa.
Yeah, the first thing we have to do is get this virus under control. We have to deal with the pandemic because our businesses are going to struggle until we get this under control. So we talked about that a little bit earlier, but that is step one. We can't get people back to working regularly without getting this virus under control. Second, when you look at the issues facing the economy, we're really looking at a worker shortage and a skilled worker shortage, especially in our smaller town and rural places. And so I would say that we need to be investing in our skilled workforce and making sure that we are building that workforce and building on our institutes of higher education in particular and our community colleges, rather than reducing our funding for them like we have been doing now for quite a while. So we need to work on that workforce issue. We also need to make sure that people can work and be able to live and raise a family when they're working full time. Our minimum wage has been stagnant in Iowa for a long time. And those are poverty level wages for folks. And we need to be working on raising our living standard for everybody who is working full time and not just people at the tippy top. And unfortunately, we've gone the other direction around this issue around wages in our state. We have restricted local communities from controlling their own wage system. And I say that we need to actually move that power back to our local communities, because I'm going to tell you what's happening in Des Moines is not reflective whatsoever of what is happening in Bremer County, right? And when we base our priorities off of what's happening in our cities, we find that they often don't share the same priorities or understand our smaller town and more rural issues to the same degree. So get this virus under control. In the meantime, we have to support our businesses, especially our small businesses. They are drowning, they're closing, they're struggling. We need to all patronize those small businesses in our communities and make sure that we are wearing our masks when we do so. And we need to be building our workforce and really working on our wage problem in the state and returning that to local control.
Great. Thank you so much. Carissa, we'll have you address this question next. How would you address the issues of funding as it relates to Iowa's great infrastructure needs?
Oh, that's a wonderful question. So Iowa doesn't actually have a funding problem. We have lots of money in this state sitting down in Des Moines doing nothing. What we have is a priority problem. And so for us, we need to be thinking about who is going to represent our financial and fiscal priorities the best. And the state needs to do a better job of being stewards and good stewards of our finances. And as somebody who lives in a rural community, I will say that it often feels like our money is going towards city needs rather than our small town and rural community needs. So I would say that we need to be really thinking about what our priorities are and what they should be, and actually having those guide our fiscal and financial decisions rather than outside interests driving our fiscal decisions. So in terms of infrastructure, Pam's talked a lot about broadband, so I won't go into tons of detail about broadband, but I think of childcare as an infrastructure issue that we have seen, especially in BlackHawk County, over the last 5 years, a shrinkage of about 34% of our childcare programs. And it is at an absolute crisis level. I'm a mom of 3 children, 2 of whom are elementary age, and 1 of whom is newly in middle school. And I'm telling you, I work full time. My husband works full time. This is our greatest challenge and difficulty in figuring out how we're going to balance our lives. And this is what I'm hearing from working parents everywhere all the time. Where are my kids going to go? How am I going to deal with this if our schools close down again because of the virus? How can I balance this? We have got to deal with our childcare issue. And these sorts of things that are foundational to rebuilding our economy and dealing with all of our other issues. And you cannot rebuild, you cannot secure a future for small towns if there is no childcare. Our families cannot make it oftentimes on one income anymore. That's the reality, right? That people are working and oftentimes have multiple people working in one family. And we have to figure out how to deal with our childcare crisis. And there's awesome work going on right now, by the way, around childcare that are public and private partnerships. And there are lots of groups working on this issue. The childcare resource folks, are doing this all over the place in BlackHawk County, and trying to address, especially since the pandemic has happened, we've seen it even worse. We've seen our childcare providers can't stay in business. They can't afford it. They can't afford PPE, right? So for me, infrastructure is about prioritizing and getting our priorities straight and making sure the priorities are coming from the people in our communities and not from outside interests or Des Moines.
Great. Pam, would you address the question as how would you address the issues of funding Iowa's grave infrastructure needs?
Okay, thank you very much. And Carissa, you did a great job on that. I love your answer. I wish I could just steal all of it. But so I concur with that childcare part as far as if you want to talk about that as infrastructure. But I've talked about broadband. The other thing that we have, Iowa has so many little streams and creeks and things like that throughout our state that we have a lot of bridges that here I am, 60 years old, and I'm just realizing how many there are and also how old those bridges are. Buchanan County is working very diligently to get some of these replaced. They've just had the opening of 2 bridges in their county, which is part of my district. And these bridges were over 100 years old. that was replaced was built in 1870, and the other one was built in 1892. And I'm like, are you kidding me? And we are finally replacing them. Think about the loads the farmers were taking across those bridges back in the 1800s with their horses and their wagons, to what they're taking, the farmers are trying to take to market now with the kind of equipment we have. And so some of these bridges couldn't be utilized. Farmers are having to take alternate routes. This is a problem, and they need to be fixed. They need to be replaced. They have done some wonderful jobs, but their budgets within the county do not allow them to do very many bridges within a year. When you think of, I think he said his budget was $300,000 a year. Well, that doesn't cover a bridge. And not only bridges, but then you have roads to maintain that are county roads. So we have in rural Iowa some real problems to address, and obviously they're needed. But boy, some of these people are very creative, first of all, and innovative, and know how to find some grants. But as Carissa said, we have money in the state, and we have to figure out how we're going to use that. We do have to prioritize. And so I believe that it can be done. I believe that as we prioritize, are we going to fix them all at once? No, no, we know that. And I know you don't spend everything you have. And yes, we have to be good stewards of our money, but we have to prioritize, take a look, and we have to do this as a state, not just, as Carissa said, once again, city first, because that's where they have the biggest representation. We have to look at it as a state and see how we benefit Iowa. And I want to just touch on what Carissa was talking about with childcare. She is so right. And some places are doing a better job of trying to figure out this problem of childcare needs than other places. But, you know, when this pandemic hit and it caused parents to have to stay home because they were trying to educate their children from home and didn't have childcare services and so forth, who usually stayed home? In most cases, it was the woman who, because that's seems to be what moms do. And, or if they're a single mom and they had to stay home because they had a couple kids that they needed to care for because that's what they needed to do. Now it's not only that the woman has lost wages, but she also has lost opportunities because she's giving up some of her career years. And so childcare is an issue that needs addressing so that women don't have to take second place in moving careers forward. And I hear people say, well, do they want to be a mom or do they want a career? Really? Do we have to make that choice?
Thank you, Pam. We invite anybody that would like to address a question to either one of our candidates here. We ask them to do so in the chat box. So our next question will be to Pam first. The statement is that Iowa's rivers and streams are badly polluted by agricultural runoff. Should pollution be controlled? And if so, who will pay for that?
Okay, thank you for that. You know, we are taking, we are already starting to take a stand on this. And we have programs, the REAP program, where they can do watersheds and encouraging farmers to do this. And our farmers are buying into it. The problem is we haven't funded it well enough. 10 years ago, we passed had the vote to raise the tax 3/8 of a cent in order to help fund REAP and our environmental issues. And it never was put into place. The legislators thought that we didn't, as voters, know what we were asking for. And so now we need to figure out how we do fund this. we are encouraging our farmers to do what's right, and they are taking the lead, and there are grants available for that. Not enough, but there are some. But it isn't just rural areas that contribute to our water issue. It happens in our urban areas as well. And we all need to take responsibility. And I know, for example, in Waverly, they really ask us not to put our grass clippings in the street. When you mow the opposite way. Have we done anything except ask people to do that? No. And yet, where does it go? When it gets into the street, the streets get washed and it goes down the drains. And yet now that we have another problem, because many people have their lawns treated too. So we have to address this as a state, both rural and urban, and address our water needs and you know, find some answers to this. As far as, does it need to be, I think you asked if it needed to be like,
Who should pay for it?
yeah, who should pay for it? I do think that it can be encouraged with grants, but I do think that we can have in our urban areas and our cities and towns, you know, just really make sure that we have an education program of why this is so important. I think there are still people who don't understand that we do have some water quality issues and that water quality is a problem in Iowa.
Thank you. Carissa, the question is, Iowa's rivers and streams are badly polluted by agricultural runoff. Should pollution be controlled? And if so, who should pay for that?
Yeah, I support a voluntary program and creating incentives to deal with this issue. We are a state that has beautiful land and natural resources that we all use, whether that's fishing, hunting, spending time on the river, or you know, our lakes, and we need to preserve these and be able, especially now in the time of the pandemic, when we our inside options for recreation are so limited, we need to really be thinking about and taking care of this issue. I have well water. I have had my well shocked because of contaminants in my own well water. So I know this issue is really important to people, and frankly, our rural folks are leading the way on this. We made some headway in the last legislative session, but we still have, I mean, I think the latest number I saw was what, 800 impaired waterways in Iowa still. When we can't eat the fish that we're catching, right, that's a problem. So we need to figure out a more stable long-term funding source, and I appreciate that Pam brought up REAP, which is certainly a piece of that. But for me, we need to be really looking at an incentive program with a stable funding source. And I also want to say, can we please reinvest in the Leopold Center?
Yes.
That we're headed the wrong way in that direction. But our farmers are doing this work already. And I trust that they're going to still be leading the way, and we need to work together and create partnerships to really address this issue, not some outside imposition onto people.
Thank you, Carissa. I think this will probably be about the last question of the evening. So again, we'd like to thank everybody for being here. So Carissa, we're going to start off with this question to you. Is what are you hearing from large city mayors in terms of the biggest problems that Iowa's largest cities are facing these days?
Yeah, well, they're facing the virus and dealing with that, as well as the underfunding of their school systems, which is having major after effects for them, as well as we haven't really talked about it very much, but the issues happening around protests and policing and the call to defund the police, and balancing the needs of people of color to be safe in their communities with the need to have protection and how to deal with that. Those are massive challenges. You know, our cities right now, life is different in rural and small town areas. Like the issue around masks and the mask mandates that are happening in our cities play out differently in our smaller towns. I mean, I even when I look at Warburg versus UNI, or the communities that they're in, Cedar Falls versus Waverly, and the ability to contain the virus to specific areas is so difficult in large cities. So those are the issues that I am hearing, and those things are actually not just particular to cities, right? They play out differently in rural areas, but they are also rural and small town issues. But that's what I would say. It's the virus. People are dying, and it's rampant, and it's destroying our communities, and it's getting into our workforces, and it's getting worse. I mean, we're on the upswing, folks, not the downswing. And the question is, how can we contain that and control that?
Thank you, Carissa. And Pam, if you would help us answer this question, is what are you hearing are the large city mayors about what their largest issue is facing them today?
Well, I think that because of the virus, you know, that's the big issue. And then being able to keep their businesses running. And why are they not able to keep them running? It's because of the virus. So how do we support them and keep them from going under? Well, the only way you can do that is to get the virus under control. And that isn't just with our large cities, it's also with our smaller communities. But, you know, I look at my two largest cities in my district, I'll give you three communities, would be Independence, Owine, and Waverly. And within those three communities, when they had to close down and shut down because of the virus, it really was difficult. And in some of those communities, even trying to bring those businesses back, because if it's a restaurant or bar, you know, that's not a very safe place to be with this virus. So we do have to get that under control. And, you know, we have got to promote the science here. And the science is wear a mask and keep others safe. And so I don't know what's wrong with saying that, promoting that, and encouraging it. And, you know, I can walk into Hy-Vee, I can walk into Fairway. There are a lot of people without masks on, and I'm not understanding that. So we really do have to promote that and get this virus under control. Because as Carissa said, you know, the numbers are going up and we are going into winter, and we are going to be in closed spaces more, which will allow that virus to spread faster.
Great, thank you, Pam. Carissa, I guess that's the end of our questions. Is there anything else that either one of you would like to state in terms of a position or something we haven't covered that you would like folks to know about? So Carissa has one. Carissa, tell us, please.
Yeah, I'll be brief, but we didn't have a chance to talk about EMS and the EMS crisis happening in our rural communities. So I just want to say that we are having a crisis around EMS in our small towns. If you call 911, we cannot guarantee that somebody will be there to help you. And that's because our system relies on very dedicated volunteers who have given their entire lives to be there during emergencies, to go to our, you know, our football games and our sports events and our community events. Those people are all volunteers in our small communities. And unfortunately, they're getting burnt out. We're not having new people come in, and they're aging out. And this is really a serious issue, especially now that we're dealing with a pandemic. And so I just want to make clear that we need to actually bring this to the table. My opponent has had 8 years to deal with this issue, and it's only getting worse. So this is something I care very deeply about, and want to make sure that we actually get EMS labeled as an essential service. It's about time. Let's do this for our rural communities.
Great.
May
I
add to what Carissa said? She lives in a small community, so she knows that. You know, I'm in Waverly, and we have the Waverly Hospital, and so we have our EMS service through the hospital and so forth. But with some of the small communities within District 32, the mayors have talked to me about this specifically, just what Carissa said, and it needs to be an essential service so that they can have help. you know, we're talking Lamont, who, you know, he just doesn't have any funding for this, and he's running out of volunteers. So she hit it right on the head. So thank you, Carissa, for that.
Great. Well, we would like to thank both of you for being a part of our panel tonight, and say thank you to both Iowa Senate District Candidate 32, Pam Egli, and Iowa State Representative District, Carissa Froyum. I've been saying that right all night except the very last there. District 63, thank you for being here. And also the League of Women Voters for sponsoring this. I think Mike has something he would like to share with us, some very important dates and such that are coming up with the election so quickly. Or maybe that was Sherry, I'm not sure. We had some, just reminding people.
I think that was Sherry.
Okay, Sherry is going to be sharing that here shortly. So some reminders to our audience, and we would ask everyone to be on the lookout for the recording of tonight's legislative panel on Facebook, and please share it with your friends. So Sherry, do you want to just tell us a little bit about some of the important things coming up here that we should all be aware of? Looks like we've got some important links here to information that our folks can get about upcoming election.
Yes, if you don't want to write down this link, you can simply Google Bremer County election information, and you'll get taken to this page. Also, I actually found the Facebook page for the Bremer County elections to be an awesome resource. So share that link, folks, and notice that everyone can be voting. There's an absentee in-person voting site at the former Mauer Eye Clinic. No reservations are needed, but you do need to have your ID. And it's going from October 5th to November 2nd. And you can look on that Facebook page for details about hours. And then I just wanted to point out, we'd love to have you join the League of Women Voters of BlackHawk and Bremer County. And we look forward to growing our candidate forums and having more people join us and supporting both counties. So you'll see our website there and our Facebook page. Thank you. And thank you for doing an awesome job, Michelle, and for our wonderful candidates. Isn't it great to see so many women running for office?
And with that, we will say thank you and go vote.